My friend asking me to DM. I would recommend you do it. We aren't looking for a masterpiece, just something to make us forget the dull reality of our existence. 3 weeks of careful preparation later, I just wasn't interested in the world. That might be because the world is boring, or I just didn't like it. It's impossible for me to say with any objectivity. What I do know is that I'm not interested in the world you built. I know that sucks, but sometimes that's just how it works. It takes a lot to share with people all of the notes you've scribbled down since middle school about the fantasy world you dreamt up. So when it comes to first-time GMs, try being at least a little bit more considerate. And if that's something you're not planning on doing, why don't you make your own fucking setting instead of turning your friend into a forever DM because you're too fucking lazy to spend a couple of hours writing down how many gods you're going to copy straight from the Forgotten Realms. $10 this guy's going to be messaging this GM in a month to ask when the next game is going to be. My name is Jacob Crow, and welcome to the Crow's Perch, where I regale you with tales of RPG horror stories. And today, we have 2 different tales of woe. The first of which, a poster asks, am I the asshole? Following an argument between a player and a DM. Though I do warn you, it escalates rather quickly into blatant homophobia. So, without further ado, let's ask the straights for the millionth time if they're okay. No, we're not. As we gather up a murder and dive right into this story. Context. I've been on a decent-sized TTRPG server for a while now. A bunch of my friends, newcomers and so on, got together. We play all sorts of systems. Legend of the Five Rings, Call of Cthulhu, 5th edition D&D, 13th Age, etc. Most people are both players and DMs in their own right. Now we come to me. I am a gay man. I have mostly played gay male characters in all of the games I've played in. A couple of times a female character, but very rare. Some people may call this as unimaginative and failure of roleplay. The sexuality of my character doesn't define them. I have run the gambit of human wizards, gnome barbarians, down-on-his-luck bankers, courtiers of all sorts. The reason for this is because I was in the closet for a very long time. I essentially roleplayed a straight person for 20 years, and it was miserable for me. It was the worst and most traumatic time of my life. Things have improved, but the prospect of having to do it again gives me panic attacks. When I DM, I can manage it with the NPCs, because I detach myself from them enough. Strangers, different people. But a player character is a different story. My character, my story. In comes DM. He has run a couple of one-shots and one full campaign. I didn't play in the campaign. He has also shared the table with me as a fellow player many times. I don't know if I was oblivious to it, but he never showed any signs of having a problem with my characters. He announces he wants to try out a Star Wars system. I am not a big fan of Star Wars, but love to see new systems, so I sign up. We learn character creation, and get to work. As you guessed it, my character was a gay man, a devil-may-care smuggler. I fill out the character sheet and make a bare-bones story. I wanted to get more details from the GM on certain aspects of the world to flesh it out later. A day later, I get a private message from him on Discord. He is asking why I made my character gay again. In the backstory, he had a scorned ex-boyfriend who put a bounty on him. I am a bit confused by this, since I don't think I need a reason, and counter with, why are your guys always straight? He tried to pivot.
This is about you. Can't you play something different for a change? It's getting stale.
I am getting a bit annoyed, but decide to give in, to a degree. Fine, I can change him to a her. Not good enough.
Again, you go around chasing guys. Just make a normal straight guy for once.
Alarm bells go off in my head. I want to get out of this conversation now. I don't care what you think is normal. My character, my choice. If you don't want me to play, say so. He gets antsy, flip-flopping about how it's not about me, how he wants to help me be better at roleplay. I am running a game myself, and yet to receive complaints about my characters. I leave the private messages and go to the server, asking people flat out, do I suck at roleplay? The majority answer is no, and my players compliment my NPCs, especially the villains. There is a bit of confusion where this came from, so I put the DM on blast, explaining exactly what happened in the private messages. A big argument broke out in general, and most of the server turned on DM. He kept arguing back and forth how he
wasn't homophobic,
but that I
was just lazy and wanted to live out sex fantasies.
Our games never go into that. It's fade to black or kisses. Nothing crazy. I missed some details because the chat was going so fast that a mod had to lock it. The DM left the server and sent me several choice expletives in the private chat. Was I in the wrong here? I'm sorry, what? Of course you weren't in the wrong. I'll say this, even calling him out? No, that was completely warranted. The dude was acting like a total asshole. I know people generally are weird about conflict when it comes to their party/friends in TTRPGs, but you 100% need to call out bad and abusive behavior. Honestly, especially if these people are your friends. I know not everyone can, and social anxiety is awful, but if you can stand up, I think you should. In this instance, OP, I think you did a good thing by nipping it right there in the bud before it escalated any further in another session. If this guy was a hair trigger away from homophobia, you don't need him in your game in the first place. Now that we're done with this story of this tail feather of a player, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic. Data theft. Sponsored by NordVPN. We're not. But if I was, this would have been a masterful segue. In our next story, we find out the lengths one overbearing player is willing to go to have their character survive the campaign, up to and including basically breaking into their DM's computer. So, without further ado, let's add a 2-factor authentication to all of our accounts. Please do this. What's wrong with you if you haven't already done this? As we gather up a murder and dive right into this story. I've been a DM for a long time, and currently, I use almost exclusively digital tools to prepare my games, like D&D Beyond, Google Drive, OneNote, etc. It's just a lot more practical than pen and paper, especially if you're doing a homebrewed game. We used to play in person before the pandemic, meeting weekly. Now that we play online, we're a group of 6 people, and we've been friends for almost 10 years. Thus, we have quite some trust between each other. The party members are experienced, and one of them usually acts as the self-proclaimed leader. This player in question has, for the last few months, been quite overbearing with the others, especially when they try to decide on something. I tried to call that behavior before, but the other players never seemed to mind. However, this bugged me, especially since he constantly led them towards choices that would net them the best results, as he would say. He avoided traps, could pinpoint twists, and was even actively suspicious of NPCs that were supposed to be villains, without me even showing any hints of that. Initially, I thought I was just being a shitty DM, and showing things on my face. But that changed the last 2 sessions. I had a problem with my internet connection, and couldn't access my notes on Google Drive. Thus, I ended up writing the 2 sessions by pen and paper. Then, during the first sessions, his straightforward leadership was nowhere to be seen. He was jittery and very anxious through the mic. I thought he had a bad day, but the next session, the same thing happened. But this time, he asked me how I was planning our sessions. I answered that I had planned them beforehand, during my lack of connection, and did it on a notebook. The session went without any issues, but I still felt strange when he asked me about that. So I decided to have a look at my notes. I didn't realize it before, but the drive in which I kept my session notes had more than just me having access to it. He gave himself access to my Google Drive, and thus could see my notes before every session. My theory is that he has probably done it when we still played in person. Regardless, I took my laptop to an IT expert and asked him to check everything. The dude had given himself access to pretty much all of my emails and drives. It took 3 hours to be able to deny that access and change all my passwords. I even changed my bank passwords just in case. Regardless, I confronted him after that, saying what he did was absurd and was borderline criminal by the nature of it. He tried to explain himself, saying his anxiety wasn't letting him have fun, when he didn't know the stories beforehand. So he thought I wouldn't mind. It ended up with him blocking me and every other friend on social media, Discord, etc., and essentially disappearing. Now, this was never something I thought would happen. Still, I do hope that's the end of it. It sucks because I trusted him, and I really didn't think a friend could be this shifty over a damn game. TLDR. A player used my laptop to give himself access to my emails, Google Drive, and online tools, so that he could know the sessions beforehand and always take the best route possible, getting defensive and disappearing once he was confronted. Spoilers. Just as they can mess with the viewing experience of a brand new movie or TV show, it certainly doesn't help a DM's confidence when a player mysteriously knows every result on a table, every roll on an encounter die, and every action a monster can perform, without ever encountering any of this in-game. Those things, in my opinion, are meant to be learned. It's part of the experience of the game. And honestly, those oh shit moments when you realize you don't have the right equipment to take down a new monster, or step into an elevator trap that slowly descends into a 30-foot pile of flesh-disintegrating oozes, are part of what makes the game fun. Without that, isn't every encounter just a timer on when you're going to eventually win? The tension is gone, and the only thing that can swing against you at that point is the dice, which will generally roll in your favor in games like 5th edition D&D. Anyway, those are today's stories, and these are my thoughts. And if you enjoyed today's stories and have your own thoughts you'd like to share, be sure to like this video and leave a comment in the comment section down below. But before we end today's video, it's time for this week's Art of the Week.
This week's Art of the Week is by Discord user Oni on the Perch Discord server, portraying myself as an adorable femboy college grad. I am both impressed and amused that Oni even included one of my first RPGs I've ever played, Dark Heresy, among the pile of books I brought to the college library. I appreciate your submission, though I fear I will be added to a YouTube dating sim because of this. I accept these consequences and your glorious artwork.
If you would like to submit your own artwork to be featured on Art of the Week, simply post it on the art channel of the Perch Discord, or feel free to message me about it on Twitter, or send me an email on my channel's business email, which can be found in the About section of my channel. None of this could be achieved without the support of my patrons, the first of which being my Birb, Reuven Gritters.
The OP of the last story probably didn't have two-factor authentication, but that won't be a problem for accounts of Quills, like Drazil, Christian Pipp, Cosmosis, Kooky Spooks, Rykis, Vincent, Mexican, Thompson, Zerofang, and Netscape Navigator.
Oh, did you think there was going to be thematic consistency with the voices I chose? Oh, you'd be wrong. But you know who isn't wrong? Our Barons of Beaks, like AModestPastry, Jester King, Gintahl, Misfit, Gibber-Woods, Wormy, Mulqueeny, Den of the Drake, McYeetly, and Anja.
Something Witch Queen came out, but unfortunately below a queen are its dukes, like the Dukes of Feathers. Like Staniel Das Boot, Rogue the Cleric, Henna, General Constantine Chase, Happy Rex, Stevie, Doc Salty 96, and Acroth.
Thank you so much for your patronage. It really means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. And you too can support the channel on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, even though you guys are completely crazy and only one of you is giving $1 and everyone else is giving like 10 and 5. And with all of that out of the way, I will see you next time as the crow flies.